Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone that's here, and hello to everyone watching, catching up on Swapcard. Am I on? Yeah. Delighted to say, if I could have your attention, please. Our next speaker has been MP for North East Derbyshire since 2017, the first time a Conservative won the seat since 1935. A government whip, Lord Commissioner of the Treasury and Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy since September. His responsibilities include construction, rail, supply chains and skills. I'm delighted to welcome, to give the government address on the Levelling Up agenda and the Net Zero Challenge, Lee Rowley. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. It's good to see everybody in such a challenging time. We know that there are difficulties at the moment, but it's great that some of us can come together to talk about this, and I know there'll be other people watching as well, and thank you all for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you today. I know I'm speaking today to an audience who has done so much to shape the UK's built environment over so many years. And I know that many of the organisations represented here or watching have played a crucial role in supporting our country through the pandemic. And it's important, and I want to say and pause for a moment about how grateful we are as a government for everything that you, your organisations and businesses across the sector have done as a whole during the most extraordinary time of our lives, and hopefully a time of our lives which we won't have to repeat again. It was only due to your resilience, your flexibility, and your adaptability that we were able to continue going, and we are very grateful as a government for everything you have done and everything you are doing at the moment and everything you will continue to do in the coming months ahead. So I've only been Construction Minister for about 9 weeks, so if you forgive me that I am not yet an expert in the sector, but I am certainly keen to understand in great detail how the sector works, to understand how best I can be an advocate for you all across government, and how working together in partnership we can make progress for the objectives which we all have. And obviously coronavirus has changed what you are doing and what the government is doing quite significantly. There have been big changes. But in big changes and in adversity comes opportunity. And that's where we are at the moment. We have an opportunity with the recovery to make a huge amount of strides in terms of where we want to go to. And then we have a huge opportunity in the other two things which I'll be talking about today in terms of net zero and in terms of levelling up, to try and deal with some very big questions which the UK has a responsibility to try and deal with over many decades. And so the objective is to get that going, which you're all doing brilliantly, and then to focus on these big issues, these big challenges of making sure that we reduce regional inequalities, and then we tread on the earth more lightly over the long term. Now, that's a big challenge for you all as a sector, but also one I know you are up for. And in the 9 weeks that I have been around, going up viewing platforms to look at High Speed 2, look at going to the Construction Innovation Hub, being sent down a sewer to look at the fantastic Thames Tideway last Monday, I can see just how much dynamism there is in this sector, just how up for you are to try and meet these challenges, and just what you are doing in the background and at the forefront to ensure that our economic recovery is successful. We know that construction is an economic engine for the UK. It drives huge benefits for people and places, whether they be my constituency in Derbyshire, where we're sat today in London, or all across the UK as a whole. And I know you employ over 3 million people with a turnover of over 400 billion, and you represent nearly 10% of UK GDP. You are hugely important to us. We're very grateful for the work you do, and we're very keen to continue to work with you. But it's those challenges now to make you, as such a hugely important sector, more sustainable, more green over the long term, accepting that you are responsible for quite a substantial number of emissions, and the built environment is responsible for quite a large number of emissions. But we know that you are keen to work together and work with us to try and resolve those over the 30 years that we now have to try and do that. It's a pretty apt moment to be talking about that point about net zero, because we're only a few weeks out from COP26, where in Glasgow welcome the world to talk about all of these very big issues and to try and keep this 1.5 degrees centigrade within reach. And I hope you saw and certainly the feedback that I've had, is that the inclusion of business within that discussion, both leading up to COP26 and then at COP26, was hugely important in making sure that we're all pulling together on this agenda. And under the UK's presidency, a day was dedicated specifically to cities and the built environment for the first time, allowing the construction industry to highlight the extensive efforts that is already underway in your sector to decarbonise the industry. And as co-chair of the Construction Leadership Council, I'm delighted to say that the CLC was right there in the thick of it, showcasing its fantastic Construct Zero industry change programme to the world, and one that I've been involved in just the last few weeks of me being in post, and one that I think has a huge amount of opportunity to show progress in the coming months and years ahead. Thanks to the events at COP26, many more companies have stepped forward to express their interest in joining the Construct Zero programme and implementing sustainable operations in the future. And this is really encouraging. But now, all the delegations have returned home. COP26 has gone off the television, and we're now into the hard graft. And that hard graft is actually, in my view, just as an interesting part of the discussion as all of the initial things which were set. We have 30 years to work out how we tread more lightly on the earth, but to do that, we have decisions which we need to take now and challenges which we need to overcome soon. And it's so heartening to see that you are up for that challenge as a sector, and you recognise the big job that is coming and are keen to work with government on it. Now, the government has tried already to create a set of frameworks which allows us to have that conversation with industry, with communities, and with the country as a whole. Many of you will be aware of the Prime Minister's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, which was launched a few months ago. It sets out how, during a time of economic challenge, which we acknowledge, how we reset our economy, and in doing so, how we embed low-carbon ideas into that reset. And there's £12 billion, for example, of government money, of subsidy, to create and support 250,000 jobs, which will allow us to bring in more than 3 times the amount of investment from the private sector, so we can make progress on all of this. And we know, 12 months on, over 50,000 jobs have already been created. We've created a £240 million net zero hydrogen fund. We've allocated £1 billion to decarbonise public sector buildings. And that's just a few examples. And it's not all about the money. The money is the enabler. It's about the output. It's about the achievement. It's about what we do with it. It's about what you as a sector help us to achieve to make sure we tread more lightly in those areas and how we can make progress on this agenda as a whole. And then other things, the Future Homes Standard, which I know many of you are aware of, will ensure that new homes are built zero carbon ready without the need for retrofitting in the future. Whilst the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund Demonstrator Project will test innovative opportunities and approaches to retrofitting in the future. The Heat and Building Strategy, which some of you will have seen came through a few weeks ago, is about trying to understand how we deal with reducing the impacts of buildings over the long term, because we know that innovation is the core of this. We are about making sure that we are innovating so people can still enjoy the things that they like, still have the creature comforts that they want, still live in the homes that they seek to live in, whilst ensuring that that is treading more lightly on the earth as a whole. And we've also published a number of things as well. So in September, the government published the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap, which goes out to 2030. And it sets out the infrastructure delivery and the performance that we're hoping for over the next decade. It's a vision for how we prioritise what we want to do as a society and as a community and as a country. And it's using data and technology to try and achieve that. And as many of you will know, at the same time as the roadmap, we've published the first pipeline, a National Infrastructure and Construction Pipeline 2021. Government is a major client. I don't have to tell you that. And it's important that when government is a client, that we give you clarity about what we're intending to do. We tell you in advance about when we're wanting to do it, and we give you the opportunity to think about how you can help drive the ideas that we have in that pipeline. And over the next 12 months, I think there's something like £30 billion worth of planned procurements. And I hope that that certainty is giving the industry the ability to plan ahead, particularly given the challenges that we've just come through on COVID-19. And the pipeline also underpins the long-term view for the recovery, because it also sets out £650 billion of projected spending over the next decade. That is a huge amount of money, a huge amount of taxpayers' money, which is going to be used. But hopefully, with your support, it's going to be converted into schools, hospitals, housing, military accommodation, and roads. And that is the way that we make progress as a society. And to turn to the levelling up agenda, it is that 650 billion, which is distributed across the country, which is the way that in constituencies like mine, North East Derbyshire, just south of Sheffield, not the most loudest of constituencies over the last few decades. I come from there, I was born there, I grew up there. But we are very keen through the levelling up agenda, as so many other parts of the country are, the North East, the North West, the South West, the Midlands, to make sure we have a clearer voice in the future. And that starts with infrastructure. It starts with ensuring that we have the right keys to be able to deliver and develop on the fantastic talent we have, not just in London, but all across the country as a whole. And you and your sector and your industry are going to be the way that we deliver that infrastructure, the roads, the railways, the schools, the towns fund, the levelling up fund, all of the things which will allow people like my constituents and constituents all across the country to see real change in their community, which convinces them that levelling up is real, which it will be. And you will see that the benefits are spread across the country. We have schemes like Hinkley Point, to give one example, which demonstrates that why certain projects might be suitable for a single region, they will eventually benefit all of the country and support local businesses at the same time. And through this 2030 roadmap, government is underscoring our commitment to technology-led recovery, construction delivery improvements, and building the market for modern methods of construction. In the government, we are in no doubt that digital and off-site manufacturing technologies has huge opportunities in the future to increase job opportunities, to unleash economic prosperity, but also to make you all more effective, to seek the efficiency which every industry and every sector quite rightly looks to make things more effective over the long term. And those technologies are so crucial as well to our net zero ambitions in addition. And there's a virtuous circle there which we can utilise if we can make it work. But it's you, as the industry, who are doing such an important and such a good job on this. You are demonstrating how by coming together and the work you're doing, supporting by government, is allowing us to make progress in these hugely important issues. And ultimately, the government can only do so much. It's a huge amount of things which the government is doing, which I hope I've just demonstrated, the £650 billion that's coming. But ultimately, it's your sector and the success and the dynamism and the interest and the commitment which you are already showing and which you will show and which you have already shown, which will allow us to make progress on these hugely important things like net zero and on levelling up. It's the decisions that you take which matter. It's the processes which you follow which will make a change in the future. And it's the changes you propose, responding and reflecting to things like net zero, which will allow us to make progress as a community and a country over time. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. I look forward to continuing to work with you in the coming months and years ahead on these hugely exciting areas, which will allow us to build a better country for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I wondered if we could throw it open to the floor, if anyone has a question for the Minister on anything at all. Yes, we've got a roving mic there, if you just wait for the mic.
Thank you, Minister, and it's very encouraging, the words that I hear from you. However, just this very week, in fact, about 3-4 days ago, a report was published saying that, and this is the Crow report, suggesting that the risk with a huge surge in spending also results in huge risks in fraud and unnecessary wasted costs, okay? And the prediction is tens of billions will be wasted. Now, is the government, or are you advocating any special measures that can prevent that from happening? Because that, unfortunately, is something that we see with our industry, with construction and infrastructure. Our leaders don't want to admit it, but it is a very serious issue. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a really interesting question, a really important one. Before I became a minister, I sat on the Select Committee in Parliament for Value for Money in government spending, for effectiveness and efficiency in government spending, the Public Accounts Committee, which is often referenced in the newspapers and on the Today programme and in the news. And what I saw in 18 months there, and I was part of a team which looked at some very large government programmes, some that went well, some that didn't go well, and we have to be honest and open about the fact that there are always challenges in government. I'm a former change director in banking and financial services, and I used to be a project manager before I became a member of Parliament. We know there are always challenges on big developments. We know there are always issues, and you are absolutely right to highlight the importance of bearing down on this, on focusing on it, and it is going to be an area that I want to look at as the Construction Minister. I would welcome comments and views from people in the audience and from the sector more widely about what we can do if we think there are particular issues, and I'll keep working with my colleagues across government to try and make sure that the risk that you highlight and the risk that the reporters highlight is minimised as far as that's possible.
Thank you. And I think we have a question down here as well.
Thank you. Neil Robertson, National Skills Academy for Rail. Welcome to the construction industry, Minister. We'll forgive you your background in terms of banking for now. Thank you for your speech. Very good. There's a lot for us to engage with there. And I'm glad you mentioned both levelling up and net zero. And in fact, they work together, don't they, as well? One of the things that we're finding at the moment is we've heard a lot about inflation of materials costs, etc. And I know that's something that you've heard a lot about. We have a similar problem at the moment around labour supply as well. And I know it's on your agenda. It's the clue is it's a big part of the levelling up story. Arguably, the biggest part of the levelling up story is getting people further from the labour market into jobs. And whilst the government's got some useful policies in this area, I think what we would see is it would benefit from a bit of a shove. Yeah, it's a bit fragmented, so it's really to put that on your agenda. I've heard you speak before and you mentioned it, so I know it's important for you, but please keep it at the top of your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I should just say in my background, I'm now a politician. I was a banker. I started off as an estate agent. So, you know, I've done all of the greats, and I'm very, very, very proud to have been all of those. Now, very happy to be the Construction Minister. You are very right to highlight those issues, particularly around labour and around skills and around inflation and supply chains. We know that they are hugely challenging at the moment. We hope there is some evidence in some areas that there are things moving in those regards, but we're absolutely cognizant of the fact that we need to make sure we have a skilled labour force that can do all of these things that I've just been talking about, and it's a very, very high priority for the government and for me.
I think we've got time maybe for just one more. This gentleman over here was first. Oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe if we can actually take two questions and then you can answer them both together and we get through.
Hello. Thanks very much, Minister. Very interesting comments. If I might just pick on Mr. Robertson's comments earlier around materials and just to throw a bit of a slightly different way of looking at things into the conversation. I work for an environmental consultancy, and we're forever being told the importance of carbon, the importance of environmental and social governance. Entirely agree with all of that. If the government were to mandate implementation of low-carbon concrete, low-carbon materials to all its government agencies and all its government clients, that would then force the supply chain to adjust accordingly. The challenge with it is cost. At the present time, the cost of those materials is higher. Is it a real cost, artificial cost? I don't know. But surely by creating such a larger market then creates the opportunity for the cost of those materials to then be reduced, which then in turn results in a better outcome for government and for government projects. Thank you.
And lady at the table at the front here.
Hi, how are you? Thank you very much for your talk. I'm a construction and engineering disputes lawyer and practice specifically in sort of renewables, and obviously hydrogen is of incredible interest to us. I've actually had particular experience of advising and working on a number of disputes in relation to very big projects in the north and in the northeast in particular. And one of the things that I can tell you anecdotally and being at the coalface is that my experience is that those large projects are really fertile ground for disputes, and that there are certain things, I have clients that say they never want to do a project in that region again, and these are big sort of global players, particularly in energy from waste. I don't know if that's on your radar, or biomass. Anyway, one of the problems, it's a very, very tough contracting environment. And this may be controversial. I'm not anti-union. I want to put that on the table. But one of the problems definitely is, I think, the influence of NAICI and sometimes the restrictive work practices and rates of pay that brings in, which makes those projects often uncompetitive. Anyway, I just wondered whether that was on your radar, because I think it's something that has to be looked at, and probably also a review of the Construction Act again, and because at the moment those larger projects are actually carved out of the Act, and we've seen that the Act has brought huge benefits in terms of improving cash flow, etc., etc. Sorry, that was very long-winded.
Thank you, and thank you for both the questions. I mean, I think on the first question with regards to low-carbon materials, the government's ambition is, and the government's clear aim is, to move to a place where we tread zero on the earth, or net zero on the earth, by 2050. There is obviously a process to get there. We have mandated and we are encouraging certain quite substantial and dramatic steps between those, the 78% in a number of industries by 2035. And I think we are very keen to make progress where we can on reducing the impact of materials. I was only talking to a number of people in the steel industry about how they can green their steel just a few days ago. And some of those things will come from incremental change, a greater use of more scrap in certain processes and things like that. Some of them will come in more substantial change, like what you have highlighted. Government's completely aware of that, and I know it will take the appropriate steps at the appropriate point. I think we are in transition. I know there is a keenness to move as fast as possible. We've got to make sure, particularly given the challenges of the last 18 months to 2 years, we've got to make sure we're doing that in a way which brings business with us, which takes us with us, which makes sure that we can get there. If we can do it in harmony, I hope we can get there quicker and more effectively as a whole. And then, thank you very much for your comments on some of the challenges around disputes. I mean, I have to say, as an early in job, that isn't an area which I have yet focused on. If there is a particular challenge, I mean, as a previous project manager, I have a lot of experience of legal challenges and things like that, albeit not in this industry. If that is a particular challenge from yourself or from other people in the industry, I would be very interested to hear more. And if you want to drop me a line or drop Bays a line and just outline some of the concerns, I'm happy to have a look at it and see what, and work through that. But the key point for me as the Minister for Construction is I want to be a champion for the industry. And I know there will be different views in the industry. So, there's always a question around what you champion. But ultimately, I want to make sure that your voice is heard all across government. I want people to understand how important you are to our current success and to our future success, and where there are things that we think we should be addressing. My door is always open, and I'm always keen to talk more.
Mr. Rowley, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.